Alright, so today I've got another cosplay build for you guys, this time from the Mobile Suit Gundam, the Witch from Mercury anime. And of course, I'm just going to go ahead and apologize for butchering the name of this particular Gundam, but it is the Lfrith Ur from the anime, of course. Now, overall, I'm fairly happy how this build has turned out. And it has been a build I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. I've just had so many things sort of on the backlog, right? And I just haven't had a chance to finally get around to it, but I finally got around to it, and I'm getting pretty happy with how it's turned out. The frame itself just kind of fits really well in armored core. I didn't really have to stretch the Imagine too much to get a pretty close match right. So I'm really happy for the most part of how the frame has turned out. Now, as for the weapons, there's a couple weapons that the Lfrith Ur uses that just simply isn't going to match one for one in armored core. For one, the main weapon, the beam Gatling that the Lfrith Ur normally uses. Obviously, there's no laser Gatling gun in Armored Core 6, so I'm just using the regular Gatling gun, right? The regular minigun. And, you know, sure, it's not a beam weapon, but it would just feel really wrong to not use a Gatling gun, you know, right? It would just look too off, right? So we are using Gatling gun. It does have a laser sword beam saber that it uses. You know, typically left-handed, so you know that was a pretty easy fit. Just put on the pulse blade, and it fit right in. Even color-wise, it matches pretty close. Now it does have a left-handed, shoulder-mounted laser cannon of some kind that I honestly, I don't remember ever seeing it used in the anime, and I kind of you know sort of skip through some of these scenes where the Lfrith Ur appears in the anime. I never saw this gun actually get used. So I'm not certain exactly how that laser cannon is supposed to function, but I went ahead and just put on the laser cannon to represent it. If you are perhaps just more familiar with anime of me, and I just missed it somewhere, and there would be a more fitting shoulder mount, let me know in the comments. And then finally, there is a particular, it's sort of a weapon, right? I think that they're weapons, but the Lfrith Ur uses a special armament called a gun Volta, right? And these are essentially just like, they're essentially like MTs that are controlled by the Lfrith Ur, right? You know, in terms of armored core equivalents, right? They're basically just MTs that the actual Gundam itself would control. And obviously there's nothing that's, you know, going to fit like that quite right. So I have to, in order to sort of represent that functionality of the Lfrith Ur a bit, I've decided to put the laser drone on the right shoulder. This particular mech doesn't normally have a right shoulder mounted weapon to begin with. So it's kind of either going to do nothing or fill in for those gun voltas, right? And since the gun voltas do use sort of beam rifles, I've given, you know, the laser drone to sort of represent that as kind of close as I could, right? Obviously, it's not a 1-for-1 match, but it is what it is. But again, overall, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. If you want to see more gameplay footage, stick around for the end of the video. But let's go ahead and get into the paint screen, and then we'll get into the assembly details. Alright, now first, as always, there'll be PC share codes in the description and the comments linked below, so you can go grab those if you're on PC. But if you're not on PC, the RGB values will also be in the comments and the description. For the materials, I've used nothing but Material 5. This has kind of become my favorite material for these cosplay builds, at least for anything anime related, right? I just feel like it's the most appropriate material for these kinds of builds. Just my personal opinion there. I also find it's a pretty easy material to work with in terms of matching the colors, so you know that helps. But yeah, overall, actually, it looks pretty simple. There's actually a lot of decal painting going on here. Like, you know, there's some, what would be some white bits right there I've painted over. Obviously, the white sort of, like, thigh bits have been put on with decal painting. The head has had some decal painting to get rid of some white bits. For the antennas, that, you know, parts that also get colored with the same part as the antenna, of course. You know, some darker, like grayish sort of painting on the core. You know, surprisingly, despite how simple it looks, quite a bit of decal painting here. So unfortunately, if you're not on PC, it's not going to be super easy to replicate on console. Unfortunately, it's also not that difficult either. Just a little tedious, right? But yeah, there's not really much else to say about the paint screen, so let's go ahead and get into the assembly. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, the primary weapon of the Lfrith Ur is the beam Gatling cannon that it uses. Now, again, obviously, there's no beam laser weapon in Armored Core 6, so unfortunately, we're going to have to make do with just the Gatling gun. It's the kinetic weapon, but I also feel like it's more appropriate than, you know, any of the laser weapons, right? I just feel like none of the laser weapons are going to really make any sense visually here compared to the Gatling gun. So the Gatling gun, in the left arm unit, we got the pulse blade. Again, it does have a a beam sword that's normally, I think, in its right arm, and then it draws that out with the left hand. Actually, color-wise, it's pretty similar to the pulse blade, so that's why I went for the pulse blade here over any other sword choice. So there you go. That's that. And then I mentioned before, but it does have that gun Volta system, which are those unmanned sort of MT equivalent sort of drone things. So we've got the laser orbit to represent those. I considered the laser turrets actually, but considering that the gun Voltas do like actively move around and like actively sort of track targets and stuff, I didn't think the laser turret was very appropriate. The other option that would probably be pretty decent is the laser drone compared to the laser orbit. So if you'd rather have that, I'll also have a version that uses a laser drone linked instead. It's kind of just up to you. Personally, I feel like the laser orbit's a bit more thematically appropriate, right? But if you would rather have the laser drone, I'll also have that there for you. And then finally, on the left back unit, we've got the laser cannon. Again, it has the Lfrith Ur has some sort of cannon on its back left shoulder, but again, I'm pretty sure you don't actually ever see it get fired. So I'm not exactly certain how this beam cannon actually functions. Again, if you are more familiar with the anime and say like the diffuse laser cannon would be more appropriate, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, yeah, laser cannon. There you go. And that's all there is to say about the weapons. Let's move on into the frame. Now, getting into my choices for the frames, first we've got the VP44D head. Now, the main reason I chose this particular head over anything else was because the eyes, right? The glowing eye bits, I felt like was the most, it matched the best with the actual head of the Lfrith Ur Gundam frame, right? And it's also got these sort of two antenna bits, which we can kind of sort of pretend those are like the sort of horn-ish, I don't know what you would call them, like the horn decorations that the Lfrith Ur head has. Obviously, I've painted them white to match, of course. And yeah, I just felt like it was the best option. Again, mostly because of the eyes, right? Now, for the core, I've gone for the Melender core. The core of the Lfrith Ur is pretty simple, pretty plain, right? Very simple looking core. And obviously, it's also got like kind of roughly the same shape as the Melender core too. But I just felt like the Melender was like by far the most appropriate core. I don't know, nothing else is really matched quite as well, right? As sort of like flattish, sort of rectangular-ish look. Yeah, definitely felt that like by far. And also like, very, very simple. Not much going on. Just one reason I chose the Melender over the Melender C3. Because it's just like, there's too much going on in this core to really match particularly well the Lfrith Ur's core. So I've stuck with the Melender core, right? Now for the arms, we've gone for the VP46S. I felt like these actually matched quite well. The Lfrith Ur has some guns in his shoulders, and these particular shoulders have those little bits right there. You can sort of pretend those are guns, right? You can pretend. And the actual shape of the shoulder bits themselves are roughly correct, right? Obviously, the right shoulder has a little bit sticking up, but you just ignore that. But it's got little bits sticking out to the side. The Lfrith Ur does, and I just felt like it just matches pretty well, right? Matches pretty well. Felt like it were by far the best option. Nothing else stuck out to me as being nearly as appropriate as the 46S, right? And finally, for the legs, the Mind Alpha legs. I mean, they just match really well in my opinion, right? There's obviously some little differences here and there. It doesn't have any like big vent holes in the front like the actual Lfrith Ur legs, right? But I felt like in just like general shape, especially the feet, right? I feel like the feet in particular match really, really, really well. Just felt that the Mind Alpha legs were the best, like by far, right? And it's just not even close. Like maybe the next most accurate would be the Alba legs, but the Alba legs actually presents a problem in that they just don't have nearly enough carry load for the build. But I just feel like the Mind Alpha legs are way more accurate anyway, right? Yeah, didn't really have much troubleshooting the legs. And yeah, there's not much else to say about the frame. It is, it's just a frame that was pretty easy to import in the Armor Core, right? Those things were pretty simple and straightforward and were easy to get in, right? So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the internals. And for those first, we've got the ever-present gills boosters, right? I mean, good mobility. These are just really good boosters in general, right? They're also like pretty low profile. They don't really stand out a lot. This doesn't really interfere appearance-wise in the build in any way, kind of like, you know, ones would, or even the Lulas to a lesser extent would, right? The gills are just really low profile. They don't really, you know, have much of an impact visually. And again, they're just really, really good. And this is a pretty significantly heavy build. Even with the gills, I'm at a 0.45 reload time, which is, you know, a bit of a shame. But, you know, I could imagine with the Lulas be far, far worse. Be a pretty heavy build. But yeah, went with the gills. Just felt like it was the best option. For the FCS, my beloved Talbot. Again, the generically good close and medium range FCS. There's no missiles on this build, but it has decent missile walk correction too, of course. It's good. I don't really know what else to say. It's a good FCS, right? And then finally, for the generator, I've gone for the NGI 000 booster. Big reason here is just that it's got a ton of energy capacity, and it's got a big energy load capacity as well. And the Santai, which would be like my kind of alternative, just simply doesn't generate enough energy with the Melander core, right? Because the Melander core does not exactly have the best like generator output. It's not bad, right? It's got 105 with a generator output adjustment, but you know, it's nothing crazy high that would let me get away with using like the Santai or something, right? And you know, you guys know I love having a big energy capacity, so the NGI 000, the big coral generator, was the obvious choice here, right? And then finally, assault armor. I like assault armor. What can I say? I mean, I do use pulse armor these days for PvP, but I mean, this isn't exactly a PvP build, so assault armor is the option I went for, of course. And yeah, it is what it is. And that's about all there is to say about the build. Now, of course, there'll be some gameplay if you stick around for it here in a minute. But yeah, as always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one.